Hey VC, this is Mark with Vinyl Crush, and I have more than a handful of records to show you today. I have some recent finds, some first pressings, and some reissues. So there's bound to be something that you like in here, and there's bound to be something you haven't seen before. Let's get started. First, I just came upon, I discovered that Pearl Jam's, this is Record Store Day, Black Friday last year. There's 13,000 copies of this, and they sold out. And they're selling online for $100 or more. There has been a lot of distribution issues going on in the record industry over the last couple of years. And so a bunch of these were discovered in distribution. They sent them out to some record stores. You can buy them at record stores now for $22.95 or whatever, $23. I picked up a copy. I didn't get one last year. I'm really excited to have this Pearl Jam MTV Unplugged. And so, you know, I got this at Music Millennium in Portland. You can probably call them and get a copy there if you can't find one in your town, city, or state. But great album. So happy that they found some more of these, and great to have one. And speaking of Record Store Day, I went in the day after the last drop and picked up a copy of the Boys Next Door Door album. This is Nick Cave and the Birthday Party crew in 1980 in Australia before they moved to London and changed their name to the Birthday Party. This is a Record Store Day release. It's on beautiful red vinyl. And this album, compared to what they were doing when they got to London and were doing Birthday Party, which is post-punk and punk music, this is a little more just kind of rock. It has a little edge to it, like Nick Cave would, but it also has kind of some, you can't quite call it pop, but it's very listenable. Every song on this album is good. This is a really, really good album. I think there's still a few copies out there. So if you can find one, if you like Nick Cave at all, this is a great album. Also, when I was listening to this album, it reminded me of another album that I have. One of the songs, I was like, wow, this sounds just like Viet Cong. Viet Cong had to change their name to the Preoccupations, but this was one of their first recordings. It's called Cassette. It was sold on the merch table, and then when they actually made more albums, they re-released this on vinyl. Anyway, the music on here is very, very similar. They're also a post-punk band, but this is before they really got that dark. And so it's kind of that same kind of feel. They also, the Preoccupations and Viet Cong have sort of an 80s feel to their music anyway. So it really kind of fits in. And other than the fact that these guys have a keyboard player, it almost sounds like it could be the same band sometimes. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, if you like Nick Cave's The Boys Next Door album, this might be something worth taking a peek at. And if you're a Viet Cong Preoccupations fan, especially the early stuff, check out the Nick Cave album. They're both quite good. So, and also the day after Record Store Day, I picked up a copy of the Jimmy Giuffre 3 and 4. This is recorded live in '65 in New York. This is avant-garde. Gosh, it's really, you know, free jazz, third stream kind of music. What's really great about this, though, is it is, as avant-garde jazz goes, as free jazz goes, it doesn't go out too far. There's always something going on that you can follow. The beat is still there somewhere. The melody is still there somewhere. They're kind of working together. They never leave each other. There's always some continuity. It's also really, it's only like 3 or 4 players playing at a time, so it has a real intimate feel to it. It's very well recorded. If you're not used to avant-garde jazz and want to check it out, this is a great intro. If you don't have this album and you like avant-garde, this is just an amazing album. It's a double album. And I understand that there's going to be another Jimmy Giuffre coming out for the Record Store Day drop coming up this Saturday, so I'm going to try and pick up a copy of that too. And then for my last video on Record Store Day, for the second drop, I talked about this album, the Allman Brothers Filmore West. This is recorded a few weeks before the Filmore East that came out in 1971. And I didn't give it a great review. And I want to just emphasize that. The packaging, the labels, beautiful, but it sounds like it was pulled off of the soundboard. And I also recently got a copy of a first pressing of the Filmore East from 1971 on the pink Capricorn labels, and I played them side by side, and there's just no comparison. You can barely, the drums and the bass get lost in the mix in the West version, and in this one everything just sounds wonderful. So if you want to hear the Allman Brothers live in '71 when they had Dwayne Allman still with them, this is the album to get. I would skip the Filmore West. So I went into Jackpot Records locally. I know one of the guys who runs the store. He came running up to me and said, "Mark, if you don't have this record, you should buy it." He said, "I just got a copy of this and I'm probably never going to see it again." This is a reissue that I think it was reissued in 2016. And it came out in, God, I'm not going to remember, 69. So this is, again, kind of avant-garde free jazz. When Charlie Haden got together to put this together, this is the Liberation Music Orchestra. Carla Bly did a lot of the instrumentation and the arrangement for it, and the trumpet player Don Cherry also plays on here. I love him; he's really good. So this was inspired by some Spanish Civil War songs that Charlie Haden listened to, and he sort of took them up, and so you hear some like beautiful little Spanish waltzes going on here that sort of evolve into something a little more chaotic and interesting, and then they come back again. It sounds kind of like it's sometimes like it's a Spanish funeral march that is done by the Salvation Army Band or something at times, and then it gets really interesting and really fun and delightful. There's a song on here called Circus 68-69, which is he sort of interprets a time in Congress about the Vietnam War when in protest, one group of politicians started singing "We Shall Overcome" because they wanted to change the verdict on something. And then the other members of Congress started asked for the band that was there to play some other songs over the top of them to drown them out. The songs were "Happy Days Are Here Again" and "You're a Grand Old Flag," and so he reenacts this basically musically on here, which really works well with the avant-garde jazz angle. Highly recommend this album. When I took it home, he was so right. I just was listening to it with a smile on my face the whole time. What a great album. It's a Impulse label. I've never seen the original pressing of this, would love to find it, but I'm happy to have the repress. It's really good. Tom Petty reissued a remastered version. Well, Tom Petty, the Tom Petty crew, whoever that is now, reissued Wildflowers. And I just bought this and just wanted to just talk about it for a moment. It sounds great. The remaster is amazing. This is the not the box set. This is just the 3-album version, so it has the two albums that come with the original package, and then one with some other material from the recording session. It has a really nice. The vinyl's really flat, sounds really clean, has some really nice packaging, and it sounds really good. Highly recommend this. These sell for like $300 a copy now for the original pressing, so the reissue came out at a great time. Recently, a friend of mine, I think actually it was Mazzy, was playing and talking about Delaney and Bonnie's Motel shot. So I couldn't find a copy of it right away, so I bought the reissue that had just come out. It's really well done, and they actually put it on the Atco labels, and nice, beautiful, has a booklet with it. This album, when I heard it, I was thinking, wow, that sounds like Leon Russell on the piano. And I love Leon Russell. I'm a huge fan of his. If any of you like the way he adds color and flourish to albums that he plays on, he was on the Wrecking Crew. He's such a great keyboard player. Anyway, he's all over this album. It's really kind of a gospel-influenced spirituals and blues. Dwayne Allman is on here, Graham Parsons on here, Joe Cocker is on here. So Delaney, Bonnie, and Friends means a lot of really great musicians. And then recently I got lucky. I was in a little store and they had a few records and I went through and I got a first pressing, again on the original Atco labels this time, of the Delaney and Bonnie Motel Shot album. And I got to play them side by side, and actually the reissue sounds great. It was very clean and very beautiful, but it's nice to have the first pressing as well. So I'm not going to pull all the inserts and stuff out because I have too many records to show, but I highly recommend this album. It's just amazing, really wonderful if you like that kind of gospel-influenced spirituals and blues. So next, I have one of the coolest albums I've listened to in recent times. Dirty Beaches is the artist, and this is called Badlands. This is a second press. The first press came out, they only did 1,000 copies. So this is one of 2,000, the last 1,000 copies of 2,000 that they pressed for this on white vinyl. This album is indie rock, experimental, psychobilly. My wife likes to call it lo-fi experimental doo-wop. Has a couple of really cool songs on here. Two of them remind me of something done by Suicide. So if you like Suicide or you're a fan of Suicide, there's a couple of songs on here, Horses and Speedway King, that remind me of Suicide tremendously. Lord Knows Best is a song that I heard first on here. Oh, that song alone is just absolutely the coolest song. So highly recommend you check this album out. It's quite wonderful. And then here I have, this is an album, this is a Portland, Oregon band from the 90s. They were really popular in the Northwest. They were up and coming, and they finally got signed by a label. They got some demos together, got signed by a label, and they put out a record and they toured Lollapalooza. And then the bassist vocalist decided he didn't want to tour. He wanted to be in Portland, wanted to do local stuff. So the band fell apart. So this is 30-06. It came out in the 90s. They remind me, first of all, this is really good stuff. I highly recommend if you like 90s rock. It's kind of like Smashing Pumpkins meets Slint meets Shellac. It's it's got a little bit of that 90s emo rock in a good way, and then it's heavy and punchy and melodic and interesting. I really like this album, and I highly recommend you check it out. I'm going to put a couple of links below of some YouTube videos that they did of their music, and also I'll put a link if you want to find the vinyl. I know how to get it. David Blunk, the guitar player for this band, remastered this. It's a 25-year later remaster, so it's brand new, just came out. He just got him in. I just ordered a copy and got it. Highly recommend it. Great album. Also, reissue Emmylou Harris, Wrecking Ball. They just reissued this. There's no information on this at all out there. I have no idea what this is. I don't think it's a remaster, but it sounds really good. The last reissue came out in like 2015 or 16, I think, and they just suddenly, they had him again. Don't know anything about it, but great album. If you have heard this, or if you haven't heard this, check it out. Daniel Lanois produced it. He did some Dylan stuff. He did U2. Great producer. This is such a beautiful album, and it's great that they had it out again because the originals of this are prohibitively expensive and hard to find. I'm doing some crate digging, and I found a first pressing of African Scream Contest. This is a great compilation of African psych rock from the 70s. A bunch of bands from all over Africa are pulled together for these little double album of great African psych. Great beats, great rhythms, great sounds. This is an amazing album, and I couldn't believe I found a first pressing of this. They do have reissues of this. It's a double album. It's just incredible. There's also an African Scream Contest 2 that I haven't found yet that I'm looking for. But this is a great album. Really enjoy this. So the next album that I have, I love this album, and I got it for like $5 in the bins. This is Archie and the Drells. These guys are old school R&B, Southern soul, funk. This came out in 1969, so it's along the lines of bands like the Platters, Wilson Pickett. The hit song on this, Tighten Up, was a big hit for them. If you haven't heard this and you like old school R&B and Southern soul, then give this a listen, because it'll have your foot tapping and you'll be soul clapping in no time. It's just a great dance little number. It's so fun. The other songs that they do on here, they do a cover of Knock on Wood and Wait Until the Midnight Hour. This is just a great album, really well done. Sounds really good. As you can see by the cover, it's not in great condition. I got it for $5. The vinyl, and notice the two-tone Atlantic labels. I love these labels. The vinyl was also, it had, you know, some hairlines and scuffs and stuff on it. It didn't look great. But these old records, you know, they're so much hardier and sturdier that they can look kind of beat up. But when you put the needle on, they sound near mint. And that's what this was. It was near mint under the needle. It sounded great. So I was really happy to find this first pressing of this album, and it sounds great. Highly recommend checking out if you like that kind of old school Southern soul. This album is a grail for me. I looked for it for a long time. When I saw it, I was stunned because it's in such beautiful condition. This is an original pressing of Santo and Johnny's first album from 1959. This has a song Sleepwalk on it, which is such a beautiful song. And if you think you haven't heard it, you might be wrong, because it's been on so many soundtracks and so many playlists. You probably have heard this song before. And if you haven't, you're in for a treat. And along the same lines as that song, the rest of the album is pretty similar. They do some great covers of like Summertime and Caravan and those kinds of old kind of 50s surf tunes and that kind of stuff, surf guitar kind of feel. This is original pressing on Canadian American labels, and it's in incredibly good condition. I was very, very fortunate to get a hold of this. So if you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. I would love to hear from you. If you want notifications when my next video comes out, click the bell when you subscribe and those will come to you. And that's all I have. Thanks for hanging out.